Within all of demonology, folklore, and literature, there are few demons as feared as the great King Asmodeus. Although he's often oversimplified down to the demon presiding over the cardinal sin of lust, the story and history of Asmodeus is far deeper than you think. Sit back and keep watching to learn how Asmodeus murdered the 7 husbands of Sarah from the Book of Tobit, and continues to stir up matrimonial strife, how he assisted in the construction of Solomon's temple, and became known by some sources as the King of Hell himself, and even managed to overthrow King Solomon and assume his throne for a brief period of time in Israelite history, according to some stories. All this and more coming up. Let's begin. Hi, welcome to Cipher Grove, the channel where we dive deep into the profound esoteric mysteries of spirituality, religion, metaphysics, and the occult. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to help the channel grow. That said, please enjoy the video. Before we begin today's video, I'd like to thank my dear friend, Aker Halaz Ethos Talakas Lupus, for becoming the channel's first Patreon supporter. Thank you, Aker. Your continued support means the absolute world to me. And if you become a Patreon supporter, you'll be entitled to various perks and services I offer. Starting mid-February, you'll be able to view my videos a week before their release date here on YouTube. You'll also be the recipient of special bonus content, discounts on some of my spiritual services, and have access to the Cipher Grove Discord, and so on. And for those of you hoping to spend some one-on-one time with me, whether to ask questions, chat about occult topics, or receive a tarot reading, you can visit my new booking website to schedule an appointment to have a virtual chat with me. I'll provide the links to both my Patreon as well as the booking site down below in the description. I truly appreciate all the support and want to thank everyone for helping me keep this channel going. Now, without further ado, let's jump straight into the video. Asmodeus has become popular in recent years as a demon of lust, but I feel like this is a very small aspect of his overall character that people have sort of ran off with. He's a much more complex entity, and his roots go all the way back to ancient Zoroastrianism. His name, Asmodeus, or as it was written in Greek, Asmodeus, stems from the Hebrew Ashmedai. But even this Hebrew name is not the earliest name this demon carried. Its Roman form, Asmodai, is derived from the Avestan name Asma Deva. Asma denoting wrath and Deva denoting demon. This name has much older roots, Asma being a storm demon who was one of the 10 major Devs from ancient Persia. Asmodeva, as the demon of wrath, was the messenger of the Zoroastrian god Ingramainu, also known in Persia as Ahriman. Stellus Daemonum, a book on demon correspondences, states that Asmodeva, acting as this Ahrimanic messenger, was known as the fiend of the murderous spear, the wielder of the bloody club, the assailer of the unjudged dead, the sower of discord among men and demons, and the agent of every kind of worldly sin. This name later evolved into the more familiar versions we now know when the figure was depicted in other Jewish legends, such as the Testament of Solomon and the Book of Tobit. Let's start with the Book of Tobit. The narrative of this deuterocanonical book follows Tobit, an Israelite of the tribe of Naphtali, living in exile in Nineveh after the Assyrian captivity. Despite his exile, Tobit remains devout, performing acts of charity and piety, such as burying the dead. However, Tobit becomes blind and falls into despair, praying for death. Simultaneously, in the faraway land of Media, a young woman named Sarah prays for death as well. She's been married 7 times, but each of her husbands has been killed by the demon Asmodeus on their wedding night, before the marriage could be consummated. Tobit sends his son Tobias to Media to retrieve some money he had left there. The archangel Raphael, disguised as the human Azarias, becomes Tobias's guide as he ventures into Media and meets the mournful Sarah. Sarah's misfortune is attributed to the demon Asmodeus, who's in love with her, and who Raphael identifies as a demon of lust. It's said that Asmodeus was obsessed with her, and could not bear to see her marry another man. And due to the fact he could not have her, he ensured no one else ever would. Raphael advises Tobias to marry Sarah, and gives instructions for how to safely consummate their marriage. He tells Tobias to take the heart and liver of a fish, and place it on burning incense in their bedchambers. The resulting smoke drives Asmodeus away to Egypt, where Raphael binds him. This draws similar parallels to the way Asmodeus was bound, as described in the Testament of Solomon. The Testament of Solomon is an early Jewish text thought to have been composed between the 1st and 5th centuries CE, that blends Jewish wisdom and apocryphal literature with elements of mythology, folklore, and the demonology of the ancient world. The text is attributed to King Solomon, but there is scholarly debate about the book's actual authorship. It narrates the story of how Solomon was able to build the temple in Jerusalem with the assistance of demons, whom he was able to control through a magic ring given to him by the archangel Michael. His interactions with Asmodeus are some of the most memorable within the story, as the two seemed to become fierce rivals from the very first encounter. And I at once bade another demon to be led unto me, and instantly there approached me the demon Asmodeus, bound, and I asked him, Who art thou? But he shot on me a glance of anger and rage, and said, And who art thou? The heated exchanges between the two only get more intense from there. Asmodeus, bound by Solomon, reveals he is the son of an angel and a mortal woman, connecting this story to the apocryphal book of Enoch and the tradition of the fallen watchers mating with humans. And I said to him, Thus punished as thou art, answerest thou me? But he, with rage, said to me, But how shall I answer thee? For thou art a son of man, whereas I was born an angel's seed, by a daughter of man, so that no word of our heavenly kind addressed to the earthborn can be overweening. And this begs the question, who were the parents of Asmodeus? Well, another ancient and folkloric Jewish text called The Legend of the Jews, in chapter 1, verses 4 through 16, it states this. Naamah, the lovely sister of Tubal-Cain, led the angels astray with her beauty, and from her union with Shamdon sprung the devil Asmodeus. She was as shameless as all the other descendants of Cain, and as prone to bestial indulgences. Canaanite women and Canaanite men alike were in the habit of walking abroad naked, and they gave themselves up to every conceivable manner of lewd practices. Of such were the women whose beauty and sensual charms tempted the angels from the path of virtue. The angels, on the other hand, no sooner had they rebelled against God and descended to earth than they lost their transcendental qualities, and were invested with sublunar bodies, so that a union with the daughters of man became possible. The offspring of these alliances between the angels and the Canaanite women were the giants, known for their strength and their sinfulness. Naamah is known throughout Jewish folklore as being the primary seducer of the angels and one of several mothers of demons, almost similar to Lilith and sometimes listed as one of her sisters. Where they fall in the lineage and whether or not they're related is an issue for another time, but knowing Asmodeus falls somewhere in the mix of the bloodline of Cain is definitely an interesting idea to entertain. Being a descendant of Cain, according to some of these traditions, would make Asmodeus a descendant of Samael, the chief of Satans. And if you need a proper introduction to Samael, I made a video that I think sums him up pretty nicely. But Asmodeus further hints that he is somehow connected to the literal king of devils in the same breath that he's taunting Solomon. Wherefore also my star is bright in heaven, and men call it, some the Wain, and some the Dragon's Child. I keep near unto this star. So ask me not many things, for thy kingdom also after a little time is to be disrupted, and thy glory is but for a season. and short will be thy tyranny over us. And then we shall again have free range over mankind, so as that they shall revere us as we were gods, not knowing, men that they are, the names of the angels set over us. The dragon's child, in this case, being a clear reference to the adversarial dragon of antiquity, and the chief of all devils. But this could also be a cleverly veiled reference to the constellation Draco, which is very near the star Ursa Major, which is identified as one of the stars associated with Asmodeus. He goes on to taunt Solomon and predicts that the demons will usurp him later on, which is exactly what happened. But Solomon continues to press Asmodeus, wanting the demon to reveal more about himself. And I, Solomon, on hearing this, bound him more carefully and ordered him to be flogged with thongs of oxhide, and to tell me humbly what was his name and what his business. And he answered me thus: I am called Asmodeus among mortals, and my business is to plot against the newly wedded, so that they may not know one another. And I sever them utterly by many calamities, and I waste away the beauty of virgin women, and estrange their hearts. And I said to him, Is this thy only business? And he answered me, I transport men into fits of madness and desire, when they have wives of their own, so that they may leave them and go off by night and day to others that belong to other men, with the result that they commit sin and fall into murderous deeds. This is perhaps where Asmodeus gets his association with lust, as was popularized by German theologian Peter Binsfeld, who classified the princes of hell according to the 7 deadly sins. But it's quite easy to see how the Testament of Solomon and the Book of Tobit are intertwined in their exploration of the character of Asmodeus, and even outline some of the same methods by which he is bound and controlled. And because Asmodeus was such a powerful demon, and having nothing to do with the pettiness and ego of King Solomon, he was more harshly bound than the other demons and forced to labor to create the temple. As the Lord God of my fathers liveth, I will lay iron on thee to wear, but thou shalt also make the clay for the entire construction of the temple, treading it down with thy feet. And I ordered them to give him 10 water jars to carry water in, and the demon groaned terribly, and did the work I ordered him to do. And this I did because that fierce demon Asmodeus knew even the future. And I, Solomon, glorified God, who gave wisdom to me, Solomon his servant. And the liver of the fish and its gall I hung on the spike of a reed, and burned it over Asmodeus because of his being so strong, and his unbearable malice was thus frustrated. But Solomon clearly knew what he was doing. Forcing Asmodeus to wear iron was no doubt unbearable for the demon, as iron is historically one of the substances used to ward off evil spirits. In the Book of Tobit, it stated that Asmodeus has an aversion to water, which is interesting, given that Solomon makes him to bear water jars while he treads the temple clay. Fish are again used to bind him, and the use of fish entrails poured over burnt incense used to agitate him. On some very primal level, I think this returns to the idea of marriage and the masculine thirst that is created when deprived of the feminine, transforming on itself into resentment. There are those who theorize that Asmodeus has an aversion to fish because it reminds him too much of God, the fish being a notable early Christian symbol in the form of the ichthys. Of course, the Testament of Solomon takes place in the First Temple period, long before the days of Jesus. I think there's actually a different reason for his aversion to these symbols apart from what early Christian folklore would have you think. The fish is a notably feminine symbol. It's represented in the sign of Pisces, the 12th sign of the zodiac. It is depicted as 2 fish swimming in opposite directions, which is an image that can be traced back to Greek mythology. One myth associated Pisces with Aphrodite and her son Eros, who transformed themselves into fish to escape the monster Typhon. To ensure they would not lose each other in the chaos, they tied themselves together with a rope, which is why the sign Pisces is sometimes depicted as two fish connected by a cord. Aphrodite and Eros are both beings associated with love, and both were observed in various ways during wedding rites within Hellenism. Aphrodite, while primarily a goddess of beauty, sometimes presided over betrothals and weddings. During some of these wedding rites, certain offerings and rituals were performed to help ensure a successful and happy marriage. She presided not just over the physical aspects of marriage, but over the psychological and emotional components of a healthy relationship as well. But there's more. Let's take a look at Asmodeus' depiction in the Ars Goetia to explore this further. In the Ars Goetia, the Book of Evil Spirits within the Lesser Key of Solomon, Asmodeus is recorded under the name Asmodai and is described as follows. The 32nd spirit is Asmodai, or Asmodai. He is a great king, strong and powerful. He appeareth with 3 heads, whereof the first is like a bull, the second like a man, and the third like a ram. He hath also the tail of a serpent, and from his mouth issue flames of fire. His feet are webbed like those of a goose. He sitteth upon an infernal dragon, and beareth in his hand a lance with a banner. He is first and choicest under the power of a Mammon. He goeth before all other. When the exorcist hath a mind to call him, let it be abroad, and let him stand on his feet all the time of action, with his cap or headdress off. For if it be on, a Mammon will deceive him, and call all his actions to be bewrayed. But as soon as the exorcist seeth Asmodai, in the shape aforesaid, he shall call him by his name, saying, Art thou Asmodai? And he will not deny it. And by he will bow down unto the ground. He giveth the ring of virtues. He teacheth the arts of arithmetic, astronomy, geometry, and all handicrafts absolutely. He giveth true and full answers unto thy demands. He maketh one invincible. He showeth the place where treasures lie, and guardeth it. He, amongst the legions of a Mammon, governeth 72 legions of spirits inferior. His seal is this which thou must wear as a layman upon thy breast, etc. The appearance of Asmodeus in this depiction is described as being triple-headed, with the heads of a ram, a bull, and a man. In the Book of the Offices of Spirits, however, his human face and goose feet are replaced with the head and feet of an ass. Stellus Daemonum makes an interesting connection between this depiction and the depiction of Set Typhon in the Greek magical papyri, which depicts Set Typhon as an ass-headed monster that correlates with Asmodeva's role as a wrathful storm devil, disrupting the cosmic order with his destructive appetites. And so we have a vague connection now between Asmodeus and Typhon, the monster which pursued Aphrodite and Eros, and his triple-headed nature from the Ars Goetia draws on even more interesting astrological implications. The face of a man representing Aquarius, the face of the ram representing Aries, and the face of the bull representing Taurus. As a note on Taurus, bulls have a lot of connection to storm gods, especially Baal Hadad and the Roman god Jupiter. In one story, Jupiter fell in love with the Phoenician princess Europa, and transformed himself into a white bull so gentle and so tame that Europa was enchanted by it. Seeing that the bull was so calm and friendly, Europa climbed onto its back. Seizing the moment, Jupiter ran off with her into the sea, and began swimming away with her on his back to the Isle of Crete. This story later became immortalized in the constellation of Taurus, which is said to depict the bull Jupiter appeared as. Furthermore, Jupiter is said to rule Pisces as his southern sign, and Asmodeus is one of the demons associated with the cardinal direction of the south, which is under the control of the demon Mammon. Interestingly, if we were to look at one of Asmodeus' heads as being representative of Jupiter, and then recognize the planets which rule the other zodiacal signs represented in the heads, we come to an interesting discovery. Stellus Daemonum states, if we then consider that Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius, and Mars is the ruler of Aries, the three heads can be said to represent the planetary powers of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars, who also happen to be the rulers of the three deacons of Pisces. So using the fish to constrain Asmodeus might have been because of the demon's astrological attachments, as King Solomon would have known. After all, despite a literal fish having nothing to do with stars so far away in the void of space, we must remember that sacred axiom of the Hermetic tablets: as above, so below; as within, so without. For this is how symbols and archetypes are structured within our universe. The microcosm is the macrocosm, and will therefore mean that any use of even the smallest of symbols with certain cosmic attachments will cause a variety of large-scale cosmic effects. King Solomon was no fool, but he did make a fatal mistake when dealing with King Asmodeus that nearly cost him everything. Solomon's downfall begins with his growing arrogance and deviation from worshipping the Israelite God alone. He started taking many foreign wives, persuading him to worship their gods. Asmodeus, cunning as he was, saw this lapse of faith as a window of opportunity. Through use of trickery, he was able to convince Solomon to give him his ring of virtue. The nature of this trick varies by accounts. Some say Solomon grew so arrogant and prideful that he believed no harm could even befall him if he threw off the ring. Other accounts say Asmodeus disguised himself, perhaps as a servant, or my favorite theory, as one of the many pagan wives Solomon trusted. Then Asmodeus freed himself from his bonds, and with his wings hurled Solomon 400 parsings from the kingdom of Israel, leaving him beggared in the wilderness to wander in exile. Meanwhile, Asmodeus shapeshifts and wears the form of Solomon himself, sitting on his throne and ruling his kingdom, freeing the demons and allowing them to wreak havoc and run amok in the land, leading the Israelites astray from the Judaic religion. Only for me to ask myself, why the hell has no one made a movie about this yet? Seriously, someone in the film industry, please make a movie, a TV show, or something in the media about this. Anyway, that's not all. To cement his revenge, Asmodeus begins sleeping with Solomon's wives for years, and even goes as far as to sleep with Solomon's own mother, Bathsheba, the wife of King David. And it's only years later, upon Solomon's return, after being humbled through hard life as a peasant in the countryside, is he able to recover the ring and take the throne back from Asmodeus. As we begin to wrap up this video, I want to discuss my own theories and perspectives on King Asmodeus as a demonolator. King Asmodeus, as I said, is oversimplified as the demon of lust, but he's more than that. He's a demon of wrath. Wrath and lust seem to be two ends of a double-edged sword he wields. One fuels the other. His wrath comes in the form of frustration with the concept of marriage, which escapes him, just as Aphrodite and Eros escaped him in his Typhonian element. Although this is speculation, it could be some very human part of him that's frustrated with his inability to be wed to a human woman, as his father Shamdon had, and his wrath against God for forbidding such love. And so, in such wrath, he plots against the couplings God does bless, the philosophy being that they should not deserve such approval if he also cannot attain it. You could honestly say that the sin of jealousy would befit him more than lust, and his anger like that of the bucking bull for which one of his heads depicts, is poised against all humans who can wed happily with Yahweh's blessing. But on the same note, who could blame him? Why does Yahweh continually bless the love of some, but not the love of others? The greatest sin of the Watchers was not violence or hatred towards humans, no. The sin which damned them was love. For it was by love and through love that they fell, and were smitten by the hearts of mortals. And beyond their couplings with humans, what more did they do but teach them the arts and sciences, and things necessary to survive here on earth? Things God would not teach. And yet, just as in the Garden of Eden, knowledge which is found beyond the confines of this Abrahamic God is sinful to inherit, no matter how peaceful, no matter how useful, no matter how liberating, and no matter how loving. If you're wondering if you should seek Asmodeus out, I'll warn you that he is not like the other demons. He is not always as welcoming, or accepting, or patient, and his presence is sometimes overwhelming. He's not beginner-friendly at all. He's the type of demon who might be kind to a certain type of person, whatever that type of person may be, and he might grant you a dance with sensuality and raw, passionate desire, and he might teach you the sciences, mathematics, and the secret things. But he comes laden with heavy troubles and the tortured soul of someone burdened with inescapable frustration. You must be prepared to endure his teachings, no matter where they take you. And you must be prepared to be brought to your limits, to dwell in the dark rage and lust which slithers in the lower self of human nature, and to learn its intricacies. But fear not, for Asmodeus is not needlessly evil in my book. He's misunderstood. He's a complex amalgamation of spiritual frustrations, but he can be learned from, and he can grow into a friend if you revere him. As with most demons, they are more evil when you resist them. Would not a dog bite someone throwing stones at it than one who throws food and treats? And I leave you with this. Conjure Asmodeus at your own risk. But if you do, approach him as one does a king, for he is worthy of his name. Thank you for watching. My name is Dorian, and this is Cypher Grove.